Good evening. My name is Vincent and I am representing Group F, and the name of our project is Assets Vulnerability Analyzer. The reason why we came up with this project was that being in the field of Security Operations Center, or even in the Network Operations Center field, we need to come up with accessing the different vulnerabilities database and check each vulnerability if this affects the list of our devices. So it might take a lot of time and effort to get the job done. And that's the reason why we came up with this somehow unified platform, which is built in-house, and that we just needed to do some additional modification of Python codes and scripts to suit this project to our requirement. So for the first part of this video, we will discuss how the project was built, the implementation phase, the demonstration phase, and some of the basic features of our project. So let's get started. First, we used GitHub as a repository of the scripts that were needed to implement the project. As you can see here, the name of the repository was tagged as Vulnerability Dashboard, and inside of it we can see some helpful notes which helped us in the execution and implementation of this project. So the first thing that we did was, aside from the coding part, and once the codes have been settled, so put it here and then do a right click, check the link, and then download the zip file. So once the file has been downloaded locally, what we should do now is to open a Microsoft PowerShell session. But before doing that one, we need to extract the files. Let me show you an example of that one. Okay, so this was the zip file, and then it was unzipped, and then there were some modifications done on the page, so that meant we needed to re-download the file and unzip it once again. Alright, so after doing that one, just open the required Microsoft PowerShell session. And then make sure that we are in the proper folder and directory. As you can see here, some of the commands failed initially, so I needed to check if I was on the right track by doing the ls command. And then I saw that there was a corresponding directory. I executed the change directory command and point to this vulnerability dashboard main folder, and did another list command, and after doing that command we were able to see the different components of the directory, like the text file, Excel sheet, etc. Once that has been done, we execute the docker compose build command, and as you can see here, some processes were visible, and luckily there were no error messages so far. And then afterwards we executed the docker compose up command, all looking good. And there we have it. Of course, we go to the verification part, and to check if everything was working fine, we needed to open a browser and use the required port to open the dashboard. So here we go. So I'm gonna open Microsoft Edge. Type the localhost command, and the port, or the local port which was used, in this case it was 8050. There we go. It's pretty straightforward. We have 4 basic tabs, namely the home, top vulnerabilities, asset list, and vulnerabilities. So let me explain each and every feature. When we click on home, it comes up with a summarized page. And then afterwards, when we click on top vulnerabilities, we can see the CVE items which affect our IT assets. So if we click on the asset lists, it's a combination of Windows and open source servers. Like for instance, Ubuntu is here, Microsoft Exchange Server being used as an email system, Windows Server 2012, a community server which is used as a web database, and the vendor is MySQL. So yeah, that's the list of servers that we have. And then the vulnerabilities repository. So as you can see, it's taking some time to update the table, so let's give it a few seconds. Yeah, there you go. So everything is listed here. But the primary goal of this project is to simplify things and then just show to the IT department which vulnerabilities are affecting the current fleet of our IT equipment. Right, for instance, we have Ubuntu Linux and our Windows Server 2012. And these are the vulnerabilities which are affecting the items. Okay, if we take a closer look on the assets list, we can see some fields such as exposure and critical business. The higher the number is, then that means a higher exposure, which is something regarded as bad. So for critical business, this is like similar to the term called severity. So that means this is tagged as severity 5, Sev 5, and needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Now we go to the other features. For this project, we also used Docker Desktop to simplify things. As we can see here, there are 2 main fields which highlight the processes. So for example, we work in a Security Operations Center field, And what we normally do during the first hour of our shift is to check our monitoring tools. For this example, we need to check if there are certain high-profile vulnerabilities which are critical and which need to be addressed. As we have seen a while ago, we need to check these fields. And how do we update, or how do we get the latest information? So it's simple. Just go back to Docker Desktop, highlight the dashboard, click on Stop, and click on Play again. So do you notice anything significant here? We can see our local port, which is 8050, and another 8050. You might be wondering, what is it used for? One is used at the back end and one is used at the front end, which means it is being used by our dashboard. All right. So going back to the topic, where do we get the list of our vulnerability database? That's a good question. So for this project, we have selected National Vulnerabilities Database. And the reason behind that one is that it gets its sources from different sectors or companies, such as the CVE program, security researchers and organizations, vendor security advisories such as from Palo Alto, or it can be Cisco, etc., from open source projects, from government agencies such as Computer Emergency Response Team Coordination Center, security research community, and commercial threat intelligence feeds. So from time to time, as we have mentioned a while ago, we just need to go back to the Docker desktop and click on this button to ensure that the list is properly updated. And at least now we have some sort of proactive monitoring. All right. Now we need to discuss some of the basic codes that were used to run this program. It's like checking the hood of your car. So GitHub is useful as a repository, as we have discussed a while ago. It's also a good platform for collaboration, wherein if we did some changes, we can tag some version number, and this is meant to inform our colleagues about the process or the progress of the codes that were done, the iteration, and to make sure that they are properly informed. As we can see here, we got the Docker commands that we used a while ago, if you remember, during our PowerShell session monitoring. So we can just discover each folder . So this dashboard folder refers to the things that we see at the browser side, while this data underscore processing folder refers to the backend. Okay, let's click on this one. As we can see, we got some terms which are highly relatable to Python, so such as PIP, and this Python, that means we're using Python 3.9 for this project. And we're also seeing a directory or location of a file which pertains to app_home, and some install commands. And there are also command lines or some Python commands which need to be executed to get the job done, such as python and dashboard.py. Okay, now we go to the Docker file under the data underscore processing category. So we're seeing some Python related lines as well, similar as to the dashboard thing. There are some minor differences if you check the last line, which pertains to the processing.py. Okay, to understand the code better, we can check on the main application folder and then check this Python file, which is dashboard. It contains several lines, so we won't delve on that one deeper. But if you notice, there were some Python libraries that were used in order to complete this project. Like for instance, Dash was imported, HTML, etc. Likewise for processing. This is also a critical Python script because this involved the calculation of the weights. Like for instance, exploitability score, the impact score, exposure, critical business, and base score. So if you see something like a sharp or hash, that is meant for leaving comments on why does this script exist. As we can see, it says here, it is meant to define weights for different vulnerability attributes. And this was used to calculate the significance of the vulnerability. Again, you might ask, how were we able to come up with this formula? Okay, number one, this was derived from different security platforms such as SANS, and this was also used in production environments, particularly in a SOC environment. And Mr. Jaime was the one who authored this one, and he had experience in executing and implementing this weight into the SOC environment. And as you can see here on the last line, this command was meant to get the top vulnerabilities based on the weighted score. And then there's also the inventory.json file. This is like a dictionary file, if I'm not mistaken, wherein there's a key and value involved. So we need to define here the asset, from the asset name to asset type all the way to the critical business field. And then if we check the vulnerabilities.json file, this might be quite large as it contains the repositories of the vulnerabilities. So, there you have it. And of course, for knowledge sharing, we have this README file. This was meant to ensure that there would be proper collaboration and can be used for training our colleagues. And then this is also the YAML file, which is an important component of our project. It also contains some lines which were helpful in the execution of our project. As you can see here, the front end and back end ports were mentioned. Okay, so we have discussed the basic features of our project, and as you can see, it is quite straightforward. It's not that complicated, but in order to understand fully how things go on in this project, we must have at least basic knowledge of Python and a little bit of web development and HTML, and of course we should have familiarity when it comes to the composition of our IT assets, because in the field of cybersecurity, particularly on the blue team side of things, we should know the ins and outs of our IT environment. We should know which devices are we defending. We should know when these devices can be possibly attacked or infiltrated. That's all for now. Once again, this is Vincent. Thank you for viewing our video demonstration. Bye for now.